What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the Thursday college basketball NCAA tournament betting preview. I'm stuck in. Joining me for today's episode are my fellow BBOC co-hosts, Mike Randall and Mike Calabrese, the Mike and Mike Show. We will get to, 14 of the 16 games on Thursday. We don't know two of the matchups. We don't know who's going to play Texas, and we don't know who's going to play UNC. Who really cares about that game? But we will cover every single other game on Thursday's slate. We will go in chronological order. BBOC is presented by North Carolina's newest sportsbook, BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. The madness is almost officially here. We're recording this before the first four tips off between Wagner and Howard. It's not quite the Christmas morning feeling. That's always Thursday. Finishing up your contest brackets, getting your final bets in, watching the clock until 12:07 strikes, and then we're off and running. No better feeling. Can you feel it in the air? Randall, what's going on, brother?
What's going on? Nothing better than this. We're in overdrive for the last week. Conference tournaments, futures. What's better than this? Can't wait. And I get excited. Always have a glass of champagne when things kick off here. Great matchup. Howard, Wagner. Nothing better. Let's do it.
Calabrese.
I'm right there with you guys. I've been doing so much content here in New York City at HQ for the Action Network. Just wrapped our Cinderella draft. So talking ourselves into a lot of upsets happening. Hopefully that's true. I think this is the time when I'm most excited. And then like the last 36 hours, I try not to get in that headspace where I'm talking myself in and out of certain matchups. It's like have some conviction, lock it in, do your homework. But after that, you just got to sit back and enjoy the games.
Yep. And just understand, like, we spend all week handicapping these games, and we're going to try to find the, small edges and matchups that matter. But a lot of times it might just come down to 3-point variance and fouls at the end. And you're going to lose sometimes like that. And guess what? You just dust yourself off and it's on to the next game. Games all day long. Don't get yourself hurt by chasing or going on tilt. It's college basketball. There's going to be bad beats. There's going to be bad 3-point variance. Just the way the cookie crumbles. But let's get into the games. As I mentioned previously, we will go chronologically. So let's kick things off with Michigan State, Mississippi State, which will tip off at 12:15 Eastern on CBS. I swear it used to be 12:07, like way back in the day. Am I crazy?
No, I think that sounds right. It was like 12:10, like they cut into the live feed, like in that 12:05 range. Yeah, I think you're right.
We're moving everything back to get more commercials. It's like the big noon kickoff on Fox. It's not big noon kickoff. It's big 12:15 kickoff on Fox. Those games never start at noon either. Anyway, I digress. Michigan State is a 1.5-point favorite here in the 8-9 matchup. Total ticked up a bit, sitting at 130.5. Good guard matchup here between Hubbard and Walker. You also have to worry about Tolu Smith in the middle of Mississippi State's packed-in defense, protecting the rim. There's all the questions about Sparty and who they're going to have at the 5. Right off the bat, I will tell you, I don't have a really strong conviction on this game yet. This is a game, I went through every single game in depth, and then I went through them again, and then I went through potential future matchups, and then during doing that, I circled a bunch of games. All right, I got to go deeper into these, and this was one of them. And the main reason I want to get this game right, or try to, even if I don't end up betting it, is North Carolina is an extremely vulnerable #1 seed, and I may have them going down in the second round, but I'm conflicted on the 8-9 matchup. So that's always the dilemma, because if you get the 8-9 matchup wrong, who cares if you picked Carolina to go down, because you don't have the correct 8 or 9 advancing. So yeah, I think this is a pretty interesting matchup, two pretty evenly matched teams. And as I mentioned, the next anticipated matchup against North Carolina, the line would be like 3.5, 4.5. It's not going to be crazy. Randall, let me go to you. And this Michigan State team has been, highly ranked analytically all year. They're 18th in KenPom, 12 spots ahead of Mississippi State, even though they closed the year losing 5 of 7, with their only wins coming over a banged up Northwestern team, and they didn't look great in that game in their home finale, and then a fading Minnesota team to kick off the Big Ten tournament. What do you see here? Do you see anything noteworthy?
Yeah, I like Mississippi State. I think they're going to win the game. They are iron sharpens iron in the SEC, and that's what Mississippi State has done. Look, their 3-point defense is superior. They're super great on the boards, aggressive inside, not a tremendously tall team, but certainly aggressive enough to battle Michigan State, who's been soft in the interior all year long. They've been looking for a reliable post presence and they can't find it. Their offense is very up and down. They're limping in as well as Mississippi State. Now, Mississippi State doesn't make free throws. That's their thing. However, they've also had some horrific free throw luck against them. Team shooting 78% against them from the free throw line. They crushed Tennessee, and they battled Auburn, giving them a pretty tough game in the semifinals of the SEC tournament. I am taking Mississippi State. I'm also taking them because I think they match up well against North Carolina in the next round. I like Chris Jans, like his in-game adjustments. Don't trust Izzo right now. He's been trying to get an identity for this team, hasn't been able to find it. They hit some good 3-point variance in the middle of the year, then they limped all the way in. I think the athletes, I think Hubbard, everything points to Mississippi State. Give me a couple threes from the outside that go in. I think they can pull away easily here. I have the Bulldogs winning this game.
Yeah, two defenses that do allow a high frequency of 3-pointers. We'll see who can knock them down in the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, North Carolina, on a neutral court in a foreign venue. The one thing that does concern me about Mississippi State, to play devil's advocate, which might end up being the difference, wrote about this in a couple of my pieces that are out on actionnetwork.com and the Action Network app. The turnover issues for Mississippi State. They have one of the highest turnover rates among all teams in the field. They're ranked 290th nationally, turning the ball over in 18.7% of their possessions, which was the same mark in SEC play. And Michigan State, top 75 in forcing turnovers, and they take care of the ball. So I am a bit concerned about just Michigan State, #1, maybe getting some easy buckets in transition, although they're not a team that really looks to run much. These are two fairly slow-paced teams, but just with those turnovers, Michigan State having a few more possessions, that might end up being the difference. But I think Tolu Smith is going to have a big game, big impact on both ends of the floor. But this ultimately just could come down to, okay, who's cooking more? Is it Tyson Walker or Josh Hubbard? Calabrese, any one-sentence quick thought on this matchup, or what you're doing in your bracket or with Carolina? Anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I love the way that you framed it. I think North Carolina is super vulnerable. I want to make sure that I'm holding the right team to face them, because I'm probably going to put them into my Sweet 16, but I just don't know who that team is. Like, I see Izzo. I know the track record. I know what he's been able to accomplish, particularly against vulnerable teams in that round of 32. But you laid it out in terms of how they played down the stretch in the Big Ten, not inspiring. And Mississippi State, if they had just made, instead of missing 10 foul shots, if they had cut that number in half, it's probably a one possession game against Auburn. So they're just stacking incredible performances, knocking off Tennessee, going away, and then hanging with an Auburn team that only turned them over 11 times. So like that's really been their bugaboo, is turning the ball over, being able to handle the on-ball pressure and the, boundless energy from an Auburn team that was essentially playing in, a home court advantage to the north up in Nashville. Is incredible how many fans they had come with them. I was impressed by that. So I guess at this point I lean Mississippi State, but it's really a coin flip.
All right. Yeah. Tough game to call, which is not unexpected with a spread sitting right around 1. But let's move on to the second game on Thursday. And let's talk about a team that got a very bizarre seed line in Duquesne with an 11 seed, the same as New Mexico. I think, I'm not sure, pretty lazy job by the committee there, who I think just had that spot open no matter what. We talked about that previously this week, but Duquesne will face BYU, who dropped from a 5 to a 6 due to a procedure, so they don't have to play on Sundays. And I think that they kind of benefited by dropping from the 5 to the 6. They're 9.5-point favorite here. This game tips off at 12:40 Eastern on True TV. Total has ticked up a bit, 142.5. First thing that jumps out to me when I look at this game is Duquesne does have a very good defense, right? Top 30 in adjusted overall efficiency, going up against an elite BYU offense that ranks 11th in that department. Duquesne will get up into you, heavy pressure the ball, force turnovers. They do, on the season, they have pressed at a fairly decently high clip, around 15%, but they have abandoned that of late. Curious to see if they do bring it back. BYU does take care of the ball well, but they have some curious splits against the press this year. They were horrendous against NC State's press and against UCF in the first meeting, but they absolutely carved up the Knights' press in their final 2 meetings, including one in the conference tournament. So the question here becomes, what wins out? The elite BYU offense or the Duquesne, very good and underrated defense? I will say a couple things that do stand out to me are the rebounding should be heavily in BYU's favor, in addition to their overall size. Duquesne is a smaller team. BYU, very versatile offense. I think that they might be able to just get what they want in the paint. You can go with like Khalifa as that point forward out top, or you can go with a Traore and just use him on the block and then set up all their shooters, and they just run such good offense. Whereas Duquesne, they're a hard team to predict what they're going to do offensively because they are so reliant on Clark and Grant, Jimmy Clark and Day Grant, just taking and trying to make tough shots, which can lead to extended droughts. Calabrese, I'll throw it to you for this one. BYU 9.5-point favorite. What do you see here?
Lay the points. Duquesne has no business whatsoever being an 11 seed. You mentioned it off the top. BYU, even though they slide down from a 5 to a 6, huge beneficiary here. I just see prolonged droughts for the Dukes. They're outside the top 200 in shooting efficiency, 2-point field goal percentage. How they shoot from the line, also outside of the top 200. Very weak on the glass. I think that's where this game could swing. And when you look at BYU, they have lots of different answers offensively. They bomb away from 3. They take over 32 threes per game. That's first in the country. So you get the opportunity to maybe run the Dukes off the court if they hit 5 or 6 triples in the first half. But they also use ball screens and zoom action as well as any team in the country. It's a beautiful offense to watch. And they figured out some really, really good defenses this year. I don't want to totally dump on the Dukes. This is the first time in the tournament in 47 years. So congratulations for making it back. You do play very good team defense. But when you look at what BYU was up against in the Big 12, they faced 5 top 20 Ken Pom defenses. They found a way to score 87 against Iowa State and UCF. That's really impressive. They hung around with Houston in a lower scoring game. It was tied with about a minute to go. So I just think that they are classes above Duquesne in this matchup. And I agree with you. I think the committee was just like, whoever wins between VCU and Duquesne gets the 11 seed. I think they're misseeded by 2 to 3 lines. I think it's that significant. So I'll go ahead and lay the points. I think BYU wins going away.
All right, moving on to the third game of the day, 1:30 Eastern on TNT. This is the first game of the tournament, the real tournament, that I am the most excited for, and that is Akron Creighton in a 3-14 matchup. Creighton is a 12.5-point favorite here. Total 142. This game will be played in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Come on, Zips fans. Not a long trip. Get down, support Akron. I love the Zips here, catching 12.5 against Creighton. I will say that Creighton shoots a lot of threes and they're very capable. So if they're red hot, there might not be anything that Akron can do. But I think that there's a path here for the Zips, who are coached by John Gross, who's 7-1 against the spread in his career in the NCAA tournament. I think that they can slow this game down to a halt. They're not as slow as they were 2 years ago, but they're still pretty slow. And I think that they will come into this game and try and play very slow. And Creighton is pretty methodical. So I think this will be a half-court battle. And the team that I just mentioned of Akron 2 years ago, they gave UCLA, who was, I think, a 4 seed, when Akron was the 13. They gave them a scare. You know what the final score of that game was? 57-53. And there are a number of starters from that team that are on this team, an extremely experienced Akron roster. You have, Enrique Freeman, who they work a ton through in the post, which probably isn't going to work against Kalkbrenner. But here's what I do like about Akron on the offensive end of the floor. They have a number. They're very good in the mid-range, and that's what you need to do against the Kalk drop. Creighton really takes away the three by design, and you can't really get much at the rim against Kalkbrenner. So they invite mid-range opportunities. Well, Akron has a number of guys, Ali, Freeman, and they even have a five-man who can step out and shoot the three, which could give Kalkbrenner some problems. Zips are also overdue for some positive shooting regression, 28.8% since February 1st. They were 34.4% before February 1st, and they shoot it at a pretty high volume. So I think that there's some paths to success here. And they're out of conference results. If you want like some comps, they had a pretty strong non-conference overall schedule. They won by 6 at South Dakota State. They lost by 3 on a neutral to Utah State. They did lose by 20 to neutral against Drake, but they beat Bradley by 15. They lost by 2 at UNLV. They lost by 1 on a neutral versus St. Bonnie's. Not bad, especially when you consider Ali. Ali didn't play in those games. He averages 16 points per game. So Creighton doesn't have any bad losses, but they got blown out in a neutral court against Colorado State. They got blown out on the semi-road game against UNLV. So I like Akron to just ugly this game up and keep this relatively close. And if you're looking for an upset, in 15 of the past 16 NCAA tournaments, there's been at least one 13 or lower seed that has won a first-round game. So if you're looking for one that not many people will have, I think this is a good one to target, because I think Akron has a decent shot here, especially if the threes are falling, and especially if Creighton isn't red hot from deep. There's a path. They have the mid-range. They have some guards who can get hot from 3. Tribble can just go off and get hot at any given notice. There's some positive regression looming. I like Akron here. I'm trusting Gross to slow this up, and it's not like Creighton is trying to speed up the game. And one final note: what Akron doesn't do, if you look, is that they're not really a rim reliant offense. They don't try to live on the offensive glass. They don't really force turnovers, and they're not looking to get out in transition. Well, that's okay against Creighton. You can't do any of those things against Creighton. So I think this is a decent matchup. Randall, you agree?
I totally agree. You mentioned Akron's non-conference ranked the schedule 59th. Did an excellent job. Gross has run 22 or more games each of the last 3 years, and they have the perfect combination stuck. They guard the arc, limit opponents 31% from three-point range, and Freeman inside can do some things against Kalkbrenner. I went to the Big East tournament, and the time Creighton made their run against Providence, they started attacking the interior because Adoro was out and Trey Alexander was getting to the basket. They just don't do that on a regular basis. They will drive to the basket to fire the ball back out for a deep logo three from someone. That's just their game. Kalkbrenner's post moves have not developed enough. Like Enrique Freeman, love Gross, love the points here. I've hated Creighton all year long. Only time they burned me stuck is at home against UConn when Stephen Ashworth is hitting shots from the logo. This is on a neutral site. I don't think it's going to happen. They get to the basket. They always pump fake. These are things Gross is going to pick up on. Akron with the points for me, and I do not mind the money line play. I agree. I think this is the matchup we wanted because you and I both didn't like Creighton, and I think we got it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And Akron, for what it's worth, they will allow let me see their exact rate. They do allow a decent amount of 3-point looks, but their opponents only shot 30% from deep, which is 13th in the country. And per synergy, they grade out in the 99th percentile in jump shot defense. So they will certainly get out on shooters and contest. And I think there's past offense here for Akron. I like the Zips. All right, let's move on to the fourth game of the day. And we have Arizona taking on Long Beach State at 2 Eastern on TBS. Arizona will try to avoid what happened last year when they went down as a 2 seed in the first round to Princeton. They are a 20.5-point favorite here against Long Beach State. This game will be played in altitude in Salt Lake City. I can't make a case for Long Beach State here. They're gonna pressure the ball. Maybe they can turn Arizona over. Maybe Caleb Love shoots Arizona, tries to shoot Arizona out of the game. The problem is Long Beach State wants to play fast, and that's not ideal against Arizona. It's not ideal as a big underdog against a supremely talented team anyway, but especially Arizona. Long Beach also has a really bad transition defense, and Arizona is a transition juggernaut, 86th percentile in transition frequency, 85th in efficiency in those possessions. And Long Beach can't and doesn't really shoot the three. They're 347th in three-point attempt rate and outside the top 300 3-point percentage. Only Jones is really their only reliable shooter. So there's not many things that are working in the variance department if you're looking for a super, Arizona to get upset again. And, Arizona's top 25 in defensive rebounding rate and free throws allowed. That's like Long Beach State's, unless they're getting turnovers and getting it out in transition, that's Long Beach State's most efficient offense, getting to the line and getting offensive rebounds. Not really going to be able to do that against Arizona, who I think will be able to ultimately handle the pressure. They also can eat up on the offensive glass here. So, this line is about where I make it, but there's, this Long Beach State wants to play fast, and Arizona could end up putting up 100 here. So if I had to bet it, I'd probably take Arizona, but I don't really see any value in the line. Calabrese, any quick thoughts here on this game or any implications for later on in the bracket?
I mean, I always pause when I see the altitude. So I just wanted to check, let's see how Arizona did at Utah this year. They scored 105 points in the Thursday, Saturday back-to-back. Then they go to Colorado, score 99 points. I think that's a little bit of a psychological plus for them in terms of being
That
able
was
to.
after a triple overtime game too.
Yep. I mean, that was, as you've said before, the spot of spots, to go ahead there and go against Arizona, but they were able to play some of their best offensive basketball the entire season. So I think there's no reason to be interested in Long Beach. This is either a pass or perhaps maybe a first half number where Arizona just runs them off the floor and, builds up a 15, 20-point lead at half.
All right, let's move on to the next game on the board, 3:10 Eastern on True TV. This is when we really get cooking during the day. There's going to be multiple games going on here, and the next slate is tipping off. Hopefully have some crazy finishes in the early slate. But Illinois Morehead will tip off at 3:10 Eastern on True TV in Omaha, Nebraska. Illinois is an 11.5-point favorite here. Total 148.5. I love Morehead State here. It's one of my favorite bets of the first round. Now I will say you might start to see this if you're on Twitter. Oh, everyone loves Morehead. They're doomed. So yes, Morehead's become pretty trendy, but I'll keep a couple things in mind. Twitter is a big echo chamber. A couple people like a pick early and then everyone kind of jumps on and just says those same reasons. And don't forget, Twitter is a minuscule. Who you see on Twitter is a minuscule percentage of the betting population in the world. And those trendy picks, I remember as soon as the draw came out, I started banging a drum for Ohio over Virginia, and the entire world was on.
Me and you were on the live show, and I
Yeah.
remember the same thought. It was like, oh no, this is the trendy pick. Everyone in the universe is on them.
And guess what? They won. So don't get scared off of a bet just because you think it's a trendy pick. If you like the team, bet the team. If you don't. But I really like Morehead State here. This is now the one thing that gives me pause. I mean, Terrence Shannon could go off here. He could go off against anyone. You hope that he doesn't get a beneficial whistle or as beneficial of a whistle as he sometimes gets in the Big Ten, because Morehead State can't get into foul trouble here. They don't have a lot of depth. That is a big concern for me. And Illinois obviously has more talent, but Morehead State profiles as the exact team that can pull off an upset as a lower seed against a better opponent on paper. They play super slow. They're very well coached. They're experienced. They have, a trio of guards that they're not overly reliant on any one of them. Belwell, you have Jordan Lathan. Any of them can get hot from deep. And then you have Riley Minix, who's just, if you haven't watched him play, he's a treat. 6'7", uber versatile player. Previously National Player of the Year at the JUCO level. This year he was the OVC Player of the Year. He can score anywhere on the court, down low from three. Impeccable footwork. He's just a really tough guard for opposing defenses. And then you have a Xavier transfer in Deontay Miles in the middle, manning their deep drop defense. This is a battle of two deep drop defenses. So if you look at their statistical profile, they're pretty similar. The couple of the things that stick out to me is not only is Morehead State play super slow, which is very beneficial for an underdog, but they can, keep Illinois out of transition. They're also an excellent rebounding team. That's super important against Illinois. And their biggest issue, Morehead's biggest issue by far, besides a lack of depth, so you got to stay out of foul trouble here, is their turnovers. And they are turnover prone, but that is not a problem against Illinois, the Illini just don't pressure the ball. Third lowest turnover rate in the country on defense. So that should help out Morehead State as well. Morehead State also much more rested, and they have a really good coach. I feel like he's going to have some added wrinkles. This is a team that's going to have a week and a half to prepare for this game. Meanwhile, Illinois just coming off of a deep run at the Big Ten tournament. And, over the past couple of years, those teams have not had success in the first weekend, the Big Ten champs. of the tournament. So yeah, Illinois' offense is awesome. I mean, they are Damask, and especially Terrence Shannon can go for 40 on any given night, but the defense has holes at their rim. They missed assignments, and this Morehead State team can take advantage. So, and look, I said Morehead State fits the bill of a team lower seed that can pull off an upset. And you have Illinois, who fits the mold for a higher seed that usually gets bounced early. Top 10 offense, defense, around 90th in overall adjusted efficiency. That usually doesn't play. So I think Morehead State can shorten this game, slow it up, and they're going to have a shot with their talent. I like the Eagles out of the OVC. Randall, you agree?
As soon as I saw it, I liked it, and I really liked. I put your tweet out on X. Love the comparison to Keegan Murray in Iowa. Everything is Terrence Shannon and Damask. Yes, Coleman Hawkins does some things as well, but they rely on Shannon, and he was on fire in that second half against Wisconsin to get home for the Big Ten tournament title. I have always faded teams that don't play defense in the tournament because the game slows down. Morehead's really going to slow you down. And the big difference for me is Morehead has size. Normally, the teams, with the exception of Purdue last year with Zach Edey, that have size inside rarely get upset the big teams in the first round. How many times see North Carolina lose in the first round with Tyler Hansborough and Zeller and those guys? But Morehead State has the size. They're top 50 in average height. And the one area you mentioned it, you look at their profile and look at them within the Ohio Valley. The one area they struggle is offensive turnovers, and Illinois does not force them. They're great at effective field goal percentage. They're great effective field goal percentage defense. They're great on the boards. They box out one and done. Great on 2-point offense, great on 2-point defense. And yes, the variance is what we want. We want a team, which is why, total ancillary point, I don't like Yale against Auburn, because that's not your type of team in the Ivy like Princeton last year, which had the big in the middle and they shot threes. Morehead State does. 44.6% of their shots in the Ohio Valley came from beyond the arc. They embrace the three. They shoot it. They have plenty of players. They play defense. They slow the pace down. Illinois doesn't play defense. All we need is to have Terrence Shannon come back to earth a little bit and not go for 30 points. And I think we have a shot here. So I was on it as well as soon as Morehead came out. I love this draw for the Eagles.
Calabrese, your consensus here. You like Morehead as well?
Oh, I do. I love Riley Minix, and a point you brought up basically since the calendar flipped to March, when you are a mid-major, can your top player be taken away from you? And we have comps here. He gave 19 to Alabama on 8 for 15 shooting from the field, scored 18 against Purdue, double-double in a near upset of Indiana. Because when you watch him play, he's so versatile, but they also use him in the pick and roll game. So you can't double him in a pick and roll situation. And then when he gets the ball one-on-one, he can either shoot over people or put it on the deck and gets to the hoop. He has so many weapons in air, so many, tricks in his bag that I think he's going to be able to score. He's probably going to need to score in the mid-20s for this to be an upset, but certainly plus the points. I think this is an opportunity to take advantage of an Illinois defense that's a bit matador in the lane. As soon as you get in there, you get a bucket. So I think the Eagles are rightfully so a trendy pick to hang around for 40 minutes.
All right, moving on to Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern on TNT in Pittsburgh. We have Oregon and South Carolina. Oregon, the surprise team from the Pac-12 after winning the Pac-12 championship. South Carolina, 1.5 point favorite here. Over under 133.5. I know, Randall, you're probably going to be banging the drum for your Gamecocks, as you always do. I might provide a counter to you. Although I haven't bet this game yet, but make a case for your Cox.
23-10 against the spread. And I understand why people don't like to bet South Carolina, because they were supposed to be so brutal at the beginning of the year. They play at an extremely slow pace, 354th in the country per Ken Palm, a la Virginia. Those type of teams are not going to draw a tremendous amount of public support. but they are great on defense. They don't turn the ball over. The offensive rebounding is relentless. And this team battled the best teams in the SEC. They won at Tennessee. They won away at Arkansas early in the year when Arkansas was actually decent. Late in the year, won at Mississippi, won at our Texas A&M team that we always liked. And then they struggled against Auburn, who went away and hid. Oregon is not that type of team. Yes, Dana Altman's great against the spread in the tournament. I know that. But this Lamont Paris team has proven everyone wrong all year, and they continue to do so. Great on the boards. They just need to be able to make some shots. I need good Michi Johnson in this game. And the line is now South Carolina favored by 1.5. Oregon, no one was on them. They got on a fantastic run in the Pac-12 tournament. Dante inside, but I think the physicality of the defense, the position, the execution, and the slow game favor South Carolina. Yes, Stuck, I will continue with the Gamecocks to continue to roll on here. A team that I just don't think gets respect and can actually win a couple games, gets that second weekend.
Yeah, to play devil's advocate, because I'm leaning Oregon right now. Advance, I'm not sure if I'll bet it. But I'm not sure that South Carolina is anyone who could slow down Dante. And Oregon, I just like Dana Altman is a fantastic tournament coach. At Oregon, he's 7-0 in the first round with an average seed of 7.1. He's 15-6-1 against the spread in the tournament, 9-3 against the spread as an underdog, 11-2-1 against the spread with 3 or more days to prepare in the NCAA tournament. He's going to mix up his defenses. I assume he's going to throw a lot of zone at South Carolina. South Carolina does grade out well against zone, but they didn't see it often, and they mainly saw it against Missouri and Elon. Not necessarily known for their defensive prowess. So I think as of now, I might trust Altman and his changing defenses and Dante inside to get this done. I will go to Calabrese just to break the tie. Maybe not for a bet, but for people who are conflicted on their bracket. You don't even have to give reasoning. Who are you taking?
I'm just going to go with Altman. I mean, you bring up the numbers, you bring up his coaching acumen. It's not roster dependent. It's not matchup dependent. It's him. If he shows up in March, he puts together a great game plan and they execute it. They have the best player on the floor. I love what South Carolina's done this year. I love what Lamont's done. I think he deserves all of his flowers. But at the end of the day, I think he squeezed the most out of this roster already. And I think this is not a good matchup to pick up an Oregon team that is getting hot at the right time. I still think their ceiling is even higher, where I feel like I know what I'm getting with South Carolina. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Ducks.
By the way, just to speak to some of the seeding here, you have the 11 seeds and the 11 seeds since 2010 have a winning record, by the way, 27-25 over the past 52 matchups between 6 and 11s. But you have a couple. Oregon could close the favorite. We'll see. So you could have a couple 11s that are favored over 6s. The 10, Nevada, is also favored against Dayton. Nevada is a 1.5 point favorite. This game will tip off at 4:30 Eastern on TBS in altitude in Salt Lake City. So something to note right off the bat is Mountain West teams have been horrific in the tournament for the past 20 years, especially against the spread. I think they're like 1-26 all time straight up as a double-digit seed. A lot of people attribute that to their altitude advantage going away. Well, Nevada, which plays in high altitude, well, this is an altitude game. So does that favor them here? That's certainly something worth noting. Deron Holmes, a star for Dayton. But if you look at Dayton, they really stumbled down the stretch and they just didn't look great, really. They got an overtime win over VCU. They lost to Duquesne in the tournament. They lost at Loyola Chicago. They lost at George Mason. Their wins came over Davidson and St. Louis in regulation.
Nobody's helping
past 3
Holmes.
weeks.
Where's the help
Yeah.
for Holmes? You know, pretty much. He had a little bit of a blip in the middle of his conference season and then started getting it going again. And just the guards have just not been there to help him out.
Yeah, I will say that Dayton does do a really good job of defending without fouling. They're third in the nation in that department. That's big against Nevada, who lives at the line. They're third in the country in getting to the line. So can Nevada get to the line? We will see. Nevada also allows a high volume of threes, which isn't necessarily a good thing against Dayton, who shoots them at a top 30 frequency and hits them at a top 3 rate. They're over 40% from 3 on the season. I'm not sure Nevada has anyone to really match up with Holmes either. But I'm still going back and forth on this game. This is one of the handful that I also had circled to go back on. Randall, let me throw it to you first for your quick thoughts. Who do you like in Nevada Dayton?
Bellwether is Javon Bennett, the point guard. I watched the Loyola Chicago game back on March 1st at Loyola Chicago. Dayton was in control of that game. Bennett gets hurt and the house of cards crumbles. He doesn't play against St. Louis, doesn't play against VCU. They still beat VCU, which is impressive. Then they played Duquesne. It was his first game back, 5 points, 1 of 3 from the field, all from 3-point range. Just really didn't do much. This is a player who is critical for their success because, like you mentioned, they're not very deep and they have to guard and not foul. I think the rest does Bennett well, and it's very tough stuff for me to get off a team with a dominant post player in Deron Holmes that is well coached by Anthony Grant that can actually shoot a ton of threes and make a ton of threes. I don't think Nevada has an answer for Holmes inside. I get the altitude part, which is why this is a coin flip to me, but I think Dayton on the starting 5 is a more talented team. I think they're able to establish Holmes inside. I think they can guard the perimeter on Lucas, Blackshear, keep those guys somewhat under wraps. I like Dayton here. I agree it's very close, and whoever gets through has a very good chance in the next game, but I'm going to take Dayton, say they make some threes, give me a healthy Bennett, and I think the Flyers take it home.
Calabrese, let me go to you for your thoughts.
It kind of kills me because I'm the A10 guy. I want to ride with my conference, but this is another misseeded situation. Nevada is a lot better than a 10 seed, and they've been tested in the past 6 weeks by just a slew of really good Mountain West teams. They're far more complete when you consider their guard play with Lucas and Blackshear, and Lucas in particular has been on this hot streak. I talked about, the guards, whether it's injuries or just kind of shrinking in some of the bigger moments. Yes, they can shoot the lights out as a team, but I'm concerned in those crunch time moments when they're taking away Holmes, because we can all agree Holmes is a legitimate superstar on both ends. He's averaging over 20, 8.5 rebounds, 2.5 blocks per game. But I've seen it happen where teams have, in the last few possessions of a game, made it difficult for him to get the ball, doubling him off the ball, saying essentially to Grant's teams, like, if there's anybody in the backcourt who can beat us, so be it. So I think in a coin flip situation, I'm leaning with Nevada. And I think the differentiator, the last piece that pushes me in their direction is the altitude. I don't actually think that that's just a narrative thing. I think it will make an impact in this game, particularly down the stretch, and they have a deeper bench. So I'll go with the Wolfpack.
The good thing for Dayton is that at least they don't foul and they do play super slow. Speaking of which, when both teams in the NCAA tournament average under 70 possessions per game, which both of these teams do, the first half under is 148, 111, and 6 over the past 20 seasons. That's 57% over a sample size of more than 250 games. That's the first half under. The games that fit the mold in the first round, UConn Stetson. Oof. I don't know if I could pull a trigger on that. I don't know how Stetson gets any stops. Houston Longwood, Duke Vermont, like that one. Baylor Colgate, and Dayton Nevada. I'll break the tie in this if you're filling out a bracket and need a push. I'm going to go with Dayton. Nevada's not going to be able to get to the line, and I'm going to trust the best player on the floor in Holmes. Look at this. The two non-A10 guys rolling with the A10. Calabrese is rolling.
Doesn't
with the
feel
Mountain
good.
West.
Gonna tell you, it does not feel good. But I gotta trust my instincts. Really, in the last 6 weeks, I haven't seen the same Dayton team that had top 15, maybe top 10 aspirations early in the season. They just were not at that class level.
Yeah, I said to myself, well, this will be, it's a game around a pick. We'll learn something about Colorado State, hopefully. Like, is the Mountain West different this year? But can we, if we're saying that altitude plays a part of it, and this game's an altitude, maybe we don't learn a lot. And it's, a minuscule sample size, but I'm very curious to see how the Mountain West does this year with all of the narrative surrounding them, all of their lack of success in the past, and now getting 6 teams in. But let's move on to our next game. Be an exciting time with definitely some nerves based on recent history here in Lexington, when Kentucky tips off against Oakland, 7:10 Eastern on CBS in Pittsburgh. Kentucky's a 13.5-point favorite here, over under 163.5. Randall, Kentucky is a polarizing team. No result in this tournament would shock me. They could go to the Final Four. I don't think that their defense is good enough to win it all, but I wouldn't be shocked mid-round to the Final Four. I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't make it out of the first weekend. What do you see in Kentucky, Oakland?
Yeah, I see Kentucky running away here. Love Greg Campy. Fantastic with his zone, disciplined team. My issue with the Grizzlies here is that they entered the year with 107th in D1 experience and 110 in minutes continuity. So, Stuck, the team that I would like against the Kentucky would be like a veteran team with experience, like a Morehead or somebody like that, who can actually inflict their style. I don't think Oakland's talent is enough to inflict a style advantage here. Trey Townsend is wonderful. He's going to struggle to get the baskets that he got against Milwaukee. Milwaukee wanted to get up and down the floor, and Oakland allowed 76 points to them. That was concerning. Their offense was fantastic, and Townsend was superior in that Horizon League championship game. It's just Kentucky's offense is too good. You really have to be able to play defense at a Texas A&M-like level to limit them. I think they get open shots. They knock them down. Their depth, their offense is good enough to get through the first round. I don't know how long they're going to be in this tournament, but I do think they're getting by Oakland here. I will take them in this matchup.
Yeah, I can't see Oakland pulling off an upset. The only way that I could, like, Kentucky's defense sometimes just doesn't show up. And I will say, like, Kentucky lost at home to UNC Wilmington. They went to overtime at home against St. Joe's. And Oakland did fare pretty well in the non-conference. They won at Xavier. They lost by 6 and 11 on the road against Ohio State and Illinois. They lost by 8 on a neutral court against Drake. So, like, they did show that they can hang when they step up in class. But you mentioned it. They're one of the most zone-heavy teams in the country. So that does lead to increased variance, and they also shoot a ton of threes. And Jack Golke is the ultimate chucker. Yes, Jack Golke for Oakland, by the way, 327 3-point attempts, 8 2-point attempts, 327 to 8.
That's
so
wild.
Oakland doesn't play super fast, and they shoot a ton of threes, and they'll give up a ton of threes, which is what you're looking for if you want to pick a stunning upset. And like Illinois, like Alabama, Kentucky does fit that profile of a team that usually doesn't make a deep run. Elite offense, defense outside of the top 100 in overall adjusted efficiency. But I think there's too much talent for Kentucky here. And while Oakland's zone leads to a lot of threes, as you would expect, the problem is they lead to way too many wide open looks, unguarded jumpers. That's bad news against Kentucky. Kentucky's zone offense grades out elite. They also generate open, uncontested jumpers at one of the highest rates in the country and hit them at one of the highest rates in the country. So, unless Kentucky has a nightmarish day from the outside, and even in that scenario, they have a huge size advantage. Like they should be able to, they're not a great offensive rebounding team, but they should be able to get second chance points. They should be able to score at the rim. And this Oakland team, I have a lot of respect for Townsend. I actually think he'll be able to have a productive day. But the way that they work, it's an isolation heavy offense. So I don't think that they can really exploit some of Kentucky's like communication and assignment issues on defense, especially off the ball. So I don't think this is the worst matchup for Kentucky. This is the best 3-point shooting team in the country by percentage. And they're going up against a zone defense that allows just a non-stop flow of open jumpers. That spells disaster. The only way I can see this getting interesting is if Kentucky has a lot of pressure on them. This is a team they live in a they basically live in like a micro. Everything is overanalyzed. The only thing that matters in this state is the basketball team. Calipari has not had any success in recent seasons. They've had early exits, bad upsets. So if Kentucky's ice cold and that defense just decides it doesn't want to show up as it does sometimes, and Oakland with 3-point variance can keep it close to like 10-minute mark, then the crowd, the nerves, the pressure, then it could get interesting. So Kentucky got to get off to a fast start here. Calabrese, any thoughts on this game before we move on?
This kind of reminds me of like a college football matchup where one team can't stop the run, and it's like, uh-oh, we drew a power rushing team. Like we're not going to be able to tackle anybody before they get 7 or 8 yards every single carry. Like this zone defense up against one of the best shooting teams in the entire country that eviscerates the zone. That's the same kind of formula here. It's like you have to get really creative to have any kind of game scripts where Oakland is hanging around and Kentucky is missing a ton of shots. I agree in a hypothetical world where Oakland, let's say, they get red hot, they make 14 threes and they hang around. The pressure does slide to Kentucky, but I think this is just an ideal matchup for the Wildcats to build some confidence back up and to head into the round of 32 with some wind in their sails.
All right, let's go to the Calabrese special, 7:25 Eastern. TBS in Salt Lake City, another altitude game between McNeese State and Gonzaga. Gonzaga around a 6-point favorite here, over under 150.5. My favorite nugget that got a lot of love on Twitter is McNeese State's non-conference schedule, which included games against Biblical Studies, Champion Christian, Laterno, and the Mississippi University for Women. Yes, they have a men's basketball team. I had to go investigate this. At least they made some progress. It used to be called the Minnesota University Education for White Women. So at least they've changed that. But I read a press clipping that said they've been trying to decide on a name for 20 years to...
Hey, you don't want to rush it. You don't want to make a bad decision.
Reflect their demographics. 20, just pick a name. I mean, ridiculous. But under Will Wade, McNeese State is legit. Pressure heavy D. I was worried about how they will handle the size of Ike, but digging into their numbers, they're going to just throw bodies at him, to trap him, frustrate him. And I actually think that, the pressure might be able to give Gonzaga some issues. Calabrese, I know you have thoughts on this game. What do you see?
Well, first off, shout out to Matt Mitchell. Was the Southern Poverty Law Center not available for McNeese in the non-con? Listen, I understand that Ike is a matchup problem, but I agree. Watching film, reading the previews of this game, reading other X's and O breakdowns, they're going to trap them. It's not going to be a situation where they can just throw 6'10" bodies at them. They don't have them. But they turn teams over almost 20% of their possessions. They are going to crank up the pressure. And particularly when Hickman has the ball, someone I've been underwhelmed by basically this entire season. His numbers have taken a little bit of a tick up in the months of February and March. But a lot of those games, he was crushing WCC teams that are not in the postseason. So I'm not impressed with him. And I have the best guard in the game. I have arguably the best guard, at least from a point guard perspective, in this entire tournament. Shahada Wells is a dude. I mean, the TCU transfer can do it all. He's got 3 games with 30 plus points. He's also grabbed 10 or more rebounds twice. He's 6 feet tall. So he facilitates. He's second nationally in steals with over 3 per game. And when they played against VCU, UAB, I know that Michigan didn't have a great year, at least in name brand. It was an impressive double-digit win. They beat all those teams by double digits. He's the 9th rated point guard in the field, according to Evan Mia, which I think is underrating him, but he's the highest rated player for, the mid-major ranks. And like I said, with EK, I think if they can figure out a way, either through foul trouble or for forcing him, to try to make cross-court passes, to try to pass out of the trap, if he has any issues and is not dominant in this game, I think the Zags are in big trouble to get upset, because when you look at his performance in their wins, he averaged over 18 points per game. In their 7 losses, he averaged less than 12 points per game. They live and die with this guy, and he's had some really, low moments and bottoming out. So I think there's an opportunity for Will Wade. He's been wearing the black hat this whole year. He's been embracing it. He's finally coming out of, the cloud cover with the NCAA. He's done a phenomenal coaching job. If I had a vote, I'd probably put him in the ring first, second, or third for National Coach of the Year. That's how good he has been. And I have an elite guard. This is a guard-driven tournament. I can't wait to back the Cowboys here on the money line to upset Gonzaga.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. McNeese State will mix in zone. They've gone pretty much exclusively man of late. I want to see if Wade mixes in more here in a tournament.
I think they have to a little bit. Otherwise,
Yeah,
it does seem
I
like
agree.
EK will eat.
Yeah, I think they want to mix up their D a lot here. And it's Gonzaga grades out very well against zone, but the only time they saw zone were against Pacific, San Diego, and Mississippi Valley State, your Delta Devils. Horrific zones. Little different of a beast here. I agree. I like McNeese, and we'll probably be picking them in my bracket. Let's move on to the 2 seed Iowa State in action on Thursday night, taking on South Dakota State. Iowa State 16.5 point favorite here. Over under up to 135.5. I like South Dakota State, actually. It's ugly. Now, what worries me is, if you wanted to get really crazy, this is the 15 that I could see winning, wild world, if the 3-point variance works in their way. Like the key thing that has to happen here, Iowa State's defense is undoubtedly elite. And they blew out almost everyone that was inferior on their roster. But when I look at this game, can South Dakota State, can Zeke Mayo and company take care of the ball? They have turnover issues, which is bad against Iowa State, who forces turnovers at the highest rate in the country. But if they can do that, and I expect them to slow this game down, and they don't go after offensive rebounds, they're going to get back, keep Iowa State out of transition, again, assuming they don't turn it over too much. If that's the case, they can turn this game into a jump shooting contest. And South Dakota State has many capable shooters. Iowa State gives up threes at a top 10 rate nationally, just in terms of frequency. And on the other end, Iowa State, which is so good at finishing at the rim, they're going to, against the South Dakota State defense that's uber compact, and they don't allow anything at the rim. They allow a ton of 3-pointers because they're pretty unathletic on the perimeter. So, and Iowa State's not a team that loves to shoot the 3. They're outside the top 300 in attempt rate. They're not an elite 3-point shooting team. And here's the thing with Iowa State is that, they're due for some potential variance. Since February 1st, opponents have hit just 28.8% of 3-point attempts on a high volume. Like Iowa State, you get a ton of threes with their aggressive defense. And teams made 33.5% before February 1st. So would it shock me that if South Dakota State has a good day from the outside? No. Now, here's the thing. South Dakota State gives up a ton of threes. So if Iowa State's making them and South Dakota State is turning it over, Iowa State could win this game by 40. And there's a wide range of outcomes for this game. And just to show you, South Dakota State played 2 Big 12 teams this year. And without Matt Mims, who matters, he was hurt. They played UCF, who was a nationally elite defense, on a neutral court. They only lost by 3. In that game, UCF, who can't shoot, was 7 of 24 from 3. South Dakota State, 12 of 28. The next game, they went to Kansas State. Kansas State was 14 of 25 from 3. South Dakota State, 7 of 21. Kansas State won by 23. I mean, that's what happens when you go 14 to 25 from 3. So I think that they can hang around. And, Iowa State, they did blow out everyone, but they didn't face any team. Like, their non-conference was so easy for the most part. They didn't face any team ranked between 100 and 230 on KenPom. The only out of conference, the only team in conference was West Virginia, who did hang around in Ames. They're the only comparable in the same ballpark as South Dakota State. Why? Because West Virginia made 10 threes. So, yeah, I know that Iowa State's going to be playing in front of a partisan crowd here in Omaha. But I think that South Dakota State can keep this within the number. Now that it's gone up a couple points, keep in mind Iowa State not only have been getting 3-point variance lately, which juices up your analytical profile, they just won the Big 12 tournament. And think about what they did there. Against Baylor, extreme 3-point variance. Like, they were red hot. Baylor couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. And then Houston punted the second half, right? Like, Roberts didn't play, and they said, all right, who cares? We're on the NCAA tournament. So as a result, they got 2 blowout wins against top 15 teams, juicing up their metrics even more. So I think this is the very peak of the market on Iowa State. I think South Dakota State has a chance to hang around if they can just take care of the ball. Calabrese, what do you say?
It is so rewarding to finally be on one of your sneaky suspicion plays here. You're trying to talk yourself into it. I thought it was just going to be me and the fine townspeople of Brookings, South Dakota, as someone who believed in the Jacks to hang around in this game. I absolutely think that they can hang around. Listen, there's a stat that I love. It's the pace adjust from.
Are you going to slander Lipsy?
I'm not even slandering Lipsy. I don't even need to in this spot. I think he'll play fine. He'll be great on ball defensively. He's super elite in that regard. They're not going to need him to score more than 10 points in this game. But here's the thing. In the opponent adjust metric, when playing slower than normal, so even slower than they want to, South Dakota State is 11th nationally in such games. And Iowa State is 199th in raw tempo. And the one piece, it's very rare for you to leave me a juicy narrative piece here, but Eric Henderson was on Coach Ott's staff at South Dakota State before he left for Iowa State. So if anyone understands how to attack this Iowa State team and put this together, I think this could be the matchup. And you mentioned Zeke Mayo. I'm not just looking at a team that's ninth in shooting efficiency in the country, but it's a bunch of guys who were, just shooting over Summit League defenders. Zeke Mayo is a big guard who can shoot the lights out. Almost 42% from 3, 93% from the line. So if he can, draw some contact and get to the line 7 or 8 times, that's a huge boost for them. I just view this as a game that's off by, 5 points in terms of the point spread. I think Iowa State is safe from an absolute upset perspective, but 16.5 is asking a lot from a team that just went through the Big 12 tournament, that very easily could be, looking ahead with Final Four aspirations and not taking South Dakota State as seriously as they need to. So I'm going to take the points for sure. 16.5 is too rich.
All right. I love it. Let's go Jacks. Let's move on to Tennessee and Rick Barnes, who is not, unlike Dana Altman, has not had much success against the spread in the tournament. He will lead a Vols team that is a 2 seed here. Tip off at 9:20 Eastern on TNT against St. Peter's, the darling from a few tournaments ago, trying to replicate their magic as a 15. Tennessee's a 21.5-point favorite here with a low total of 130. I don't see it with this Peters team. They're even though it's a new coach and they're new players, they only have one player from that team, and he only played 1 minute in the tournament, Latrell Reed. This is just a worse version of that team. That year, pre-tournament, they were 118th in overall efficiency, 187th this year. Offense 259, 305th this year. 34th on defense 2 years ago, 76th this year. They are playing much slower. The 338th in adjusted tempo. They're going to press, and they're going to run a very methodical offense. They're going to try to turn you over. They will mix in zone. The problem is Tennessee is elite against the press, 99th percentile, elite against zone, and they don't turn the ball over. They have multiple ball handlers. They also should be able to dominate the offensive glass here. They should be able to get to the line a ton against St. Peter's aggressive D. St. Peter's, their offense is basically like take bad mid-range jumpers, which, by the way, isn't great against Tennessee, who ranks 3rd in mid-range percentage allowed, and then hope to get offensive rebounds or hope to get to the line. Now, you can do that a little bit against Tennessee, but it's not like St. Peter's is good at the line or near the rim when they get those offensive rebounds. One of the worst rim offenses in the country. I will say Corey Washington is a stud, and he didn't play in 7 games this year for St. Peter's. They went 1-6 in those games, so their metrics are a bit deflated. But when they stepped up in class this season, they lost by 11 on the road at Seton Hall, 9 at Duquesne, and 31 at Rutgers. Meanwhile, Tennessee is 9-0 against teams ranked outside the top 100 on KenPom. They won by an average of 24 points per game. I just can't see St. Peter's offense consistently scoring in the half court against this Tennessee defense. And they don't run. They're methodical. And I've said this all year, Tennessee's transition defense is what you want to attack. Their per synergy, they're 28th percentile defending in transition, 98th percentile in the half court. If Dalton Connect is on one, I think this gets ugly quick. I can't lay this number with this low of a total, especially if St. Peter's gets a friendly whistle. But I certainly would lean Tennessee's way. And St. Peter's, their offensive numbers, I just told you, outside the top 300 in overall adjusted efficiency. Their numbers get even worse when you just isolate their offense against man-to-man. They're 351st in points per possession against man defense. Well, that's all they're going to see against Tennessee. That is bad. I just can't see them scoring enough here. I think this is a Tennessee rout. Any of you guys have any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, you mentioned it with the schedule. Every time St. Peter's has played a team that is going to try to defend them and match them defensively, they struggled. UMass Lowell, Rutgers, Duquesne, Tennessee coming off the loss should be chomping at the bit. They're going to be able to score. Ziegler this year didn't have him last year. Big difference. It's Tennessee for me. Numbers high in a low-scoring game with a slow pace, so I agree with you there. But I'm on this Vols team. St. Peter's not getting the upset here. Certainly Iowa State, a more live underdog as 2 seed than Tennessee.
All right, let's move on to a game with a lot of intrigue because there's some injury uncertainty with a newly found potential high major Cinderella in NC State, which made a magical run in the ACC tournament. They will now take on Texas Tech, 9:40 Eastern on CBS. Texas Tech is a 5.5-ish point favorite. This game will be played in Pittsburgh. The thing for me here is it's very hard for me to handicap this game because of the injury uncertainty with Texas Tech. Believe it or not, if you look, per Evan Mia, if you look at all of the 5-man rotations that played together for at least 100 possessions, Texas Tech has one that has the highest overall adjusted offensive efficiency. And it's Isaacs, McMillan, Toussaint, Warren Washington, and Williams. Well, we don't know how healthy Washington and Williams are going to be. And Washington is obviously super important, especially against DJ Burns, who's just a monster on the block. His passing ability is great. NC State does usually want to press you, although they stopped doing that in the ACC tournament. Maybe that's because they were playing 5 games in 5 days, but they weren't even doing as much early on. You don't want to press Texas Tech. Elite press offense, ball handlers all over. So I'm curious to see how they play this defensively. I also want to see what NC State has left in the tank emotionally, physically after that run. But I just can't do anything with this game without knowing how healthy Tech is. Randall, what do you got here?
Washington, I think, is going to play. This is all projection. I don't know if Williams plays. He was in a boot, noticed in that last game. So if Washington goes stuck, I will go with Texas Tech. I will go with the defense, with the free throw shooting. And guys, NC State's got to come back down to earth with the 3-pointers. I mean, they were scalding hot, white hot in the ACC tournament. They were not against Virginia, 3 of 17, but we know Virginia's anemic on offense. That's the situation. I think Texas Tech is the better team. I need Washington. Otherwise, it's a stay away from me. But if I get him, even if I don't get Williams, I'll take Texas Tech.
Well, they went 3 of 17, but the one they hit was a banked in 3 that kept their season alive.
Right.
Unbelievable. And the ACC still ended up getting both those teams in. All right. Yeah, Texas Tech, if they're fully healthy, interesting team. Could certainly beat Kentucky in the second round. Could make a deep run, but a lot of it's going to come down to health, as it will with many teams in that region. But let's move on to the penultimate game of the Thursday slate between Samford and Kansas, 9:55 Eastern on TBS. This game will be played in Salt Lake City, Utah. Altitude, depth, huge depth advantage for Samford, one of the deepest teams in the country, like 12 deep. Could that matter against the Kansas team that doesn't have a lot of depth and has injury questions? Kevin McCullough, how healthy is he going to be? Hunter Dickinson, how healthy is he going to be? At full strength, I would 100% bet Kansas here, because at Samford, they play bucky ball, fast pace, they press you, want to turn you over, extended zone pressure with press. You don't want to zone Kansas. Kansas's press offensive numbers are bad this year, which is interesting, but they have a lot of ball handlers. Samford doesn't have anyone to stop Dickinson. They lost by 50 to Purdue earlier in the season, and they allow as many transition opportunities as any team in the country. Kansas is a transition juggernaut. So I think fast-paced game in the transition battle, that spells disaster for Samford, but the injury uncertainty, the depth questions, and altitude, certainly a lot of uncertainty here if you were looking to pick an underdog with the Samford Bulldogs. Calabrese, you are headed in that direction. You like Samford?
Yeah, I'm doing it. They play fast. You mentioned it. They force turnovers. They're risk takers on defense. I understand that because of the talent differential that they need to do that to a certain degree. But also, I think in terms of the draw, they play a lot of zone. I'm not necessarily sure, because of the health injuries, if McCullough's not 100%, does Kansas outside of Furphy have the knockdown shooters? We talked about this early in the season. Where are the shooters to be able to take advantage of that? I think this is a pretty good draw for Samford. And listen, defensively on the inside, if Dickinson does try to go, Core is a pivotal man in the middle for the Bulldogs. He's super long and athletic on the defensive end, and he works really well with Rylan Jones in ball screen situations. He's super efficient when he does shoot the ball. So it's rare for a mid-major truly to have a big who's as talented and versatile as he is. And from our own Brandon Anderson here at the Action Network, in the last 2 decades, Kansas under Self, he's been upset by the 5, the 6, the 7, the 8, the 9, the 10, 11, 13, and 14 seeds, including 6 upset losses on opening weekend. So this would not be a first for him. He's clearly a great coach. He's, won multiple national championships. He has proven it when he needs to get his teams turned around to a certain degree. But this is the transfer portal era. There's just something weird going on with this team. Like, for the first time, they not only did they not win, but they weren't even in it down the stretch of the Big 12 race. Then they get into the tournament. They're ended up sitting guys, so they just roll over for Cincinnati. I'm not convinced they're just going to flip a switch and we're going to see that team from the beginning of the year that had so many quality top 10 wins that looks so great. They beat UConn. I think that team is far gone in the rearview mirror. So I'm going to take a Samford team that, they need a lot of things to go right, but they have 8 of their top 12 rotational guys all shoot at least 38% from three. To me, that profiles as a giant killer with the way that they play. And I think because of their depth, it's going to make a difference in terms of, the overall exhaustion level for a team like Kansas, who's a little bit more shallow on their bench. I like Samford here to win outright.
All right, and finally, let's finish things up with the last tip on Thursday night, 10:05 Eastern on True TV. Drake, 1.5 point favorite against Washington State. Another case of a double-digit seed being a favorite here, with Drake as the 10, Washington State as the 7, total 138.5. I like Drake here. Look, there's a couple intangible factors here that I think are working in their favor. One, this game's in Omaha, little crowd advantage, less travel. Two, the experience edge for this Drake team that was here in the tournament last year was up with 8 with 5 to go. Sadly for me and anyone else who bet Drake, they blew that lead to Miami, who would then go on to the Final Four. I think I have the best player on the court in DeVries. Brody can stay on the court in this matchup. And, Washington State doesn't have a really great pick and roll offense. And they will throw some zone out there, but I don't think that's a great idea against Drake, even though Drake is graded out much better against man. I just think from an X's and O's perspective, Drake matches up pretty well. I also think Washington State, a lot of respect for both of these coaches, but I think that Washington State kind of peaked earlier in the season, and it might partly be because Miles Rice might have hit a little bit of a wall and his production has kind of declined. But I think Drake grits this one out and pulls it off over Washington State as a small favorite. I like the Bulldogs. Calabrese, you agree?
Yeah, I'm with you here. DeVries is a stud, and what's nice is he's proven throughout the season that he'll play his best basketball when they're playing the best teams. When you look at the 3 teams that are in this field that they played against, plus the 3 games against Indiana State, who were the highest net team to ever be left out of March Madness, he averaged almost 27 points per game. Now, their defense isn't great. It's only 75th in KenPom, and they give up way too many shots around the hoop. Their 2-point percentage defense is 246 in the country. But when they do get stops and teams miss their shots, they're 7th nationally in defensive rebounding percentage. So I really like that from a mid-major. In terms of the opponent adjust metric, when they're playing high quality opponents, they're 24th in terms of their performance in the entire country. And they come in hot. They've won 10 of 11 straight up. That includes knocking off Indiana State in Arch Madness. They do it with lots of big kill shot runs. The 10-0 runs are better. They have 24 on the season. And then we're talking a lot about DeVries, but A10 Wright also has the potential to go off from long range if they're doubling DeVries and they're working the ball around the perimeter. He's a sharp shooter. He has 3 or more triples in 4 of his last 9 games. I think he's the perfect complement to DeVries. And I agree. I think there's going to be a lot of home cooking, a lot of home fans there, less than 2 hours from Des Moines to Omaha.
Randall, any final thoughts on any of the games that we mentioned or anything else you want to get out there before we sign off here?
Yeah, 2 things. I'm on the other side of this one, guys.
Oh, really? Interesting.
And Drake is a team that I when they went 16-0 and 16-0 against the spread, that was a fun year, a lucrative year, Mr. Calabrese. But this one I'm against. 285 in non-conference strength of schedule. DJ Wilkins, Roman Penn, big difference from last year's team that battled Miami. I think Washington State is up for the task. They can shoot it from the outside. I agree with Rice Stuck. He got worn down, but he had a little bit of time now to get right. I think they pull this one out, Washington State. It's very close, but I'm not on Drake to go through here. They look great in the Missouri Valley, but I want to see them here against a good Washington State defense that is longer and tougher than I think they're used to. Other one, guys, I will co-sign on McNeese. I will co-sign on them going against Gonzaga. Love everything about them. Their defense, the pressure, Will Wade. And guys, let's not forget that in the non-conference, yes, they did play some teams, as Stuck said, are looking for name changes, but they had 3 massive road wins. VCU away by 10, Texas State on a neutral by 11. They beat Michigan, of course, scoring 87 points by 11. And finally, UAB, who's in the tournament, a robust 21-point win on the road. I like McNeese to win outright, guys. But great job. Great slate of games on Thursday.
By the way, Gonzaga, we've seen their resurgence and everyone jumping back on them. Since February 1st, they're shooting 39.7% from three. They were 33.5% prior to February 1st. Definitely shooting above their heads. Don't be surprised if they have an off shooting night.
Guys, really quick
weekend.
Really quick quiz for you. Last time Mark Few did not get out of the first round, who beat him?
16. I think he's made it out of the first round 15 straight times.
Oh, yeah. It's a
that
famous
right?
player. A team that was led by a famous player. 2008.
That's Steph Curry. Steph
That's
Curry,
it.
Davidson.
That's
There
it,
we go.
Davidson.
There it
we
is.
go.
Wow,
Well done,
nice.
Calabrese.
That was a
Very
high
good.
scoring game, I think, too.
Yep.
It was a fun game.
Steph Curry saved my bacon that year as someone
Curry
who's taking a
Curry
few
might have
bets.
had 45 or something in that game.
He went nuts in the second half of that game. It was incredible.
Yep.
All right, good stuff. We will be recording the Friday, myself, Mike Calabrese, and Greg Waddell, covering every game on Friday, which should be out shortly after this one. Might already be out while you're listening, so make sure you check that out. Happy Madness to everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Good luck filling out your brackets. Good luck on all of your bets and in any contests that you enter, pools. It's a beautiful time of the year for bettors and college basketball fans alike. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Mike and Mike for joining me. Thanks to our producer on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you again for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Leave a 5-star review. I'll do some giveaways next week. Did a bunch last week. Those really help us out. Say whatever, just leave 5-star review. And we will be back for many BBOC live shows, 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Make sure you check those out. But thanks for tuning in and enjoy the madness. Cheers.